Hi, everybody. It's Rayanne from Parnassus Books. I'm so happy that we have such a great event tonight with illustrator Gale Galligan. Gale is the illustrator of Logan Likes Mary Anne, the latest Babysitters Club graphic novel. If you would like to purchase a copy from Parnassus, there will be a link below, and you can get a book plate signed and illustrated by Gale. If you have any questions during the event, and for Gale, you can put them in the chat. And it's my great pleasure to turn it over to Gale Galligan. Welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Hi, I'm Gale Galligan. I am here coming to you live from my home studio in Pleasantville, New York. It is a little chilly. The trees are turning colors. I love it. So what I want to do today is, first of all, say hi. I am the cartoonist responsible for 4 of the Babysitters Club graphic novel adaptations. Most recently, Logan Likes Mary Anne, which just came out in September. I wanted to show you a little bit of where I am, what I'm up to, maybe show off my bunnies, do a little drawing with you, and then get to some Q&A. So let's get started. I am working out of a room in my apartment, and this is where I spend most of my time. You can see behind me, I've got a drafting table. You might notice something interesting. Here is a page from one of my books. I ink by hand, but you might notice that the page is much, much, much bigger than it ends up being in the actual book. And this is great because it means if my lines get a little bit wiggly or weird, they're going to shrink down and nobody will notice. It's awesome. So I spend a lot of time back here inking with some of my favorite inking tools, which usually include this little dip pen that you put into black ink, a brush that I fill in shadows with, and a lot of whiteout because nobody's perfect. Let's see, I also have some fun stuff to keep myself motivated and excited. I love looking at other people's beautiful drawings and getting notes from my friends. This is a card from Raina. When I first started on the Babysitters Club, she sent me a hoodie that had BSC on it for some reason, and neither of us know why. She got it from the Gap and she was just really excited about it. So that's now like a secret BSC hoodie, and I love it so much. I ended up passing it on to the next person who's working on it. So it's now like a pal hood of the traveling hoodie. Over here, I have some books and mini comics that also get me really excited to draw, and sometimes a little jealous, but it's fine. And let's see, most importantly, perhaps, I'm going to take you on a little journey here. See, more and more stuff to show off. I just love surrounding myself with beautiful things, including my rabbits. These are, and I'm sorry if it's a little bit tilty here, Dipper and Serena. Dipper is the darker colored rabbit. Serena is the lighter brown one. Right now she's kind of grooming her paws, just licking them a little bit. And Dipper's head is all the way down because he wants her to groom his head instead. They are a bonded pair, which means that they spend a lot of time together. They love each other very much. They'll groom each other. They'll eat together. And they're basically best friends for life. But sometimes Serena's a bit of a jerk because she doesn't groom Dipper as much as Dipper grooms her because she thinks she's the boss. I love them so much. Bunnies are very, very, very soft, and it's hard to describe how soft they are. So I love to get in there and spend some time just petting and snuggling with them. They're super cute, and I cannot express enough how much I love these rabbits. But I also love comics. So I'm going to try sharing my screen and doing a little bit of doodling with you while I chat with Rayanne about comics. Then after that, I'll move on to an exercise on Autobio comics, and then my face will come back after that. So let's see how this goes. So what I'm going to do now is share a program with you called Clip Studio Paint. This is a program that I use when I am drawing digitally. And for me, that is everything up until the inking stage when I'm working on comics. What this means is that I'm sketching things out. I'm coming up with ideas doing doodles, making plans digitally, where it's really easy to fix stuff. And then once I have all of my ideas penciled in, once I pretty much know what I'm doing, I'll print those pencils out on the big sheet of paper you saw behind me, and I'll ink over those lines and scan them back in. So I'm half digital, half traditional. Let's see. So this is a program called Clip Studio Paint. I like it because it's made specifically for people who make comics. It has tools like making panel borders, so you don't have to worry too much about that. It has perspective tools, which is something you learn about when you're an artist. It's basically, hey, if you're looking down at a set of stairs, it's going to look different than if you're looking up at a set of stairs, right? And perspective is just how you figure out where those lines go. It's hard, so having a program that has rulers for that can be very helpful. But you really can make comics just about any way you want. This is just something that happens to work for me. So here's a little sketch of Chrissy to get myself warmed up.
There is a question from
Yes.
Anita. She says, I noticed a girl drawn in Boy Crazy Stacey looks a lot like Raina. Was that intentional?
My guess, I can't see the page you're thinking of, but the answer is going to be probably. One of my favorite things, and one of the favorite things of many cartoonists I know, is to sneak in people and stuff we like into our comics. My mom, dad, and sister actually show up in, I think, every volume of the Babysitters Club I've worked on. So Raina definitely could be in there as well.
That's awesome. Audra asked, are there any plans to write a book about the bunnies?
Thank you for asking. I have some ideas about bunny-related books that I would love to pitch to Scholastic at some point. Pitching is when you say, I have an idea, would you be interested? And sometimes they say yes. So hopefully.
If anyone else has questions for Gale, please put them in the chat and I'll ask her.
Sounds good. Yeah, so right now I'm just kind of loosely doodling just outside of my own brain. You can see that let's see, kind of default to some ideas sometimes. Like I'll usually start with the head, like this little, I like to draw heads kind of like little beans. But everybody's different. It's all about like how you end up deciding to visualize a comic. For me, I'll usually put down some lines to say, okay, I think this is where the face is going to point. Like if they're looking to the left, then I'll put them here so that I know my eyes are going to be around here, my nose is going to be in the middle here. If they're looking up, then it's probably going to look more like that, right? These are just guidelines to give myself an idea of where I'm going. It helps to break things down into simpler, more understandable shapes while you're working on a comic, so it doesn't seem as complicated. And that's especially true for stuff like hands, which I have a lot of trouble with.
There's a question from Raven. Why did you decide to put Jessie for the first time in this book?
Oh, thank you for asking, Raven. This was a decision that I came to jointly with the editors of the Babysitters Club series. And it's a little bit complicated in that it's something we've all wanted to do for a really long time. But it was hard figuring out when that time would be. Because you see, in the original books, Jessie and Mallory didn't show up for about 14 volumes. Raina did this really cool thing where she said, okay, I want to speed this up. I want the characters to start showing up early because I love them. So she pulled Mallory in very early, right? So now we have to figure out, okay, so we're adapting these older books that already exist. And now we've also added in Mallory. So we get to change those stories around a bit to include her. How can we do that for Jessie as well? Because originally Jessie moved into a house that somebody moved out of. But since we moved the story ahead, that person hadn't moved out yet. So I had to come up with a bunch of ideas like, here's how we could fit this in without having to shorten the other parts of the story. So it was a big story puzzle that we got to solve together. And this was the time when it ended up being possible.
That's awesome.
It's a lot of fun.
Audra asks, how did you get into this profession? What an amazing job.
Oh, thank you, Audra. I'm very lucky and have also worked very hard. Both of those things are true. But for me personally, I've been a huge, fan of comics, of drawing. I've made a lot of stuff for a very long time. To tell you my whole life story, I loved comics, like Garfield as a kid, The Far Side, Calvin and Hobbes. If it was in the Sunday Funnies, I probably read it. I clipped it out. I put all my favorites into a binder so I could read them later, and then try to draw my own comics inspired by those, right? And I kept on doing that. I would just make all sorts of stuff, trying to make my family and friends laugh, trying to like express myself. And that really didn't stop as I got older. I would do autobiographical comics about my day, about stories about my friends and our original characters that we made up together. And I kept on drawing all sorts of comics. Let's see, got really, the only problem there was I didn't make the connection that the people who are making the comics that I love so much were also doing it as a job. It was something that I could do. I ended up going to school for animation because I just didn't realize, hey, I could try to make comics professionally. The first time that I met a cartoonist in person who was making comics for a living was when I interned in 2010 for Raina Telgemeier, which is a wild coincidence. Smile had just come out and I read it and I loved it. I looked her up online and found out that she happened to be looking for someone to help her with her next book, and she lived a few blocks away from me. So I said, why not? I went over there and just realized, hey, that is something people do. That's something I could do. And after that, I was hooked. I kept on making comics, but with the idea that maybe I could sell them. Maybe I could do this for a living. And that's kind of how I ended up just getting into it. Like, as I kept going, more people saw my stuff. I got to talk to Scholastic and pitch my work. And they happened to be looking for somebody to pick up the Babysitters Club books at that point. I was a huge fan of the Babysitters Club growing up, so I was really, really excited about it. And that's where I am today.
Awesome. Alicia asked, can you draw yourself?
I can. And this will be a good way for me to segue into an Autobio comic after this. Let's see. How I usually draw myself is pretty similar. I go with that little bean head. Right now, my hair is a little shaggy, because, aren't we all? But I have, like, those colorful bangs. I usually give myself, like, big goofy eyes and glasses. And let's see, a little collared shirt, probably with bunnies on it. I actually do have a bunny shirt. Let's see, or two. And let's see, maybe just a little bit of extra hair over here. And that's me. Okay. So like I mentioned, I'll show that off for like 2 more seconds. It's me. I also draw myself as a little dinosaur like this sometimes, and that's a lot easier. So I wanted to talk to you a tiny bit about autobiographical comics. And this might be a word that you know already. It basically means comics that are about you, about something that you have experienced, about something that you're feeling, just a way to explore your own stories. And there are a lot of graphic novels that deal in autobio, like Raina's Smile or Sisters, like, oh gosh, so many other comics like Tilly Walden's Spinning. They're all so unique and special because they're about these individual stories, right? But it's something that you can do at home. And like I mentioned, it's something that I've been doing since I was a little kid. And one of my absolute favorite things is that now I have those. I can still go back, look at my old autobio comics and remember what I was thinking or feeling, or look at these old memories that I might not have held on to otherwise and see exactly what was going on with me at the time. It's a really special way to keep track of yourself as well as, practice your comic book craft. So I wanted to try to do a quick exercise with you where I come up with one on the fly. Because I haven't really done anything super exciting this week, I'm going to pull from my memories and tell you about a time right after my sister and I got a new dog with our family. So this would be when I was probably about 12 years old, which means that I had long hair and I always clipped it out of my eyes. I had big glasses. And I was like this lanky tween, right? Just, hey, it's me, tiny Gale with big hair. And then my little sister, who's 2 years younger than me, was kind of the cool one. She was a big rebel and she loved to get into all sorts of trouble. So we were kind of like Claudia and Janine, except I was Janine. Let's see, so you can kind of see the difference in our personalities here. So this is me, Gale, and this is my sister, Lori. And then our family had a brand new, fluffy, beautiful, rebellious, how am I gonna do this? Husky. And they're a little bit hard to draw on the fly. Let's see. I can do better than that. The important thing about comics, as I always say when I make little goofs like this, is that you're communicating. Even if you're not 100% happy with your drawings all of the time, if you're telling a story and someone can understand it, that's still a good comic. You have succeeded in the main goal of the comic. And you can always go back and redraw stuff, but you're gonna keep getting better as you practice. So we've got me, my sister, and the husky Coney, right? And we decided that we were going to take him out on a walk, but we also wanted to do something else too. So, I'm gonna start off by drawing some panels, right? And these panels are going to be, number one, I have to show you what's going on, where we are, kind of set the scene so that when you're reading this comic, you know why we're here, right? So let's see. I'm gonna have me and my sister standing by the doorway. And in my old house, that means that there was like some stairs, right? And the dog would be right here. He's ready. We're taking Comey. And this is why I use fonts, because my handwriting's a little scribbly, for a walk. Doop. And you can see that my drawings are very simple. Right now, I'm just sketching out ideas so that if I want to make this a full finished comic later, I can go back in, refine it, draw everything with a little bit more detail. But right now, you know where everybody is, you know what they're saying, and that's the most important part. And then I think Comey would be much more excited. He wouldn't just be sitting down. He'd be like leaning forward, like, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. Because that's how dogs are, right? And in the distance, mom is going, okay, bye. So we've got, let's see. Let's get a leash on this dog. And let's see. I decided to draw something a little bit complicated. So I'm gonna have, let's see, holding the leash, and I'll write clips so you know what's happening here. Pant, pant. And again, this is just me getting my ideas down. So you can see how I started with something where the camera was pulled out pretty far, so you can have an idea of what all is going on over here. But now that I've established that, I can zoom in a bit more. I can show you what's happening. And then I'll have myself off to the side where you can't quite see me yet, saying Lori a little bit dramatically. And what is going to happen now? Let's see. I'm going to be holding rollerblades. I have an idea. Doot, doot. Oh no. This was the one time I was the cool rebellious one. I really just wanted to step it up a bit. What if we rolled with the dog? I thought to myself, like a genius. And so now we can have Lori down with the dog looking up at me like, ooh. So now we've set the scene. We know that something terrible is probably going to happen, right? So, next page. It starts off great. I'm gonna zoom back out because we're in a new place, right? I wanna show you where we are now so that you don't get lost or confused. I wanna show you that we are rolling along with a husky, which again, is a great idea and nothing bad is going to happen. Yeah! So we've got the husky trotting along. And if I were doing this comic, let's see, for real, like if I were fleshing out these ideas a little bit more once I'd had it sketched out, I would probably look at a lot of pictures of people roller skating. I'd look at a lot of pictures of huskies walking. Because as you continue to practice, you'll build up a visual library, right? You'll put all of these images inside your head and store them for later. But there's always going to be stuff that you can't quite remember. Like, I know how to draw people holding stuff, but if you ask me how somebody held a phone, for example, maybe I would blank a little bit, like, oh, how does the hand curve around the phone exactly? I can't quite remember. I'm gonna have to look that up. It's totally normal to have to look up reference or take photos of yourself and friends. And it really does help a lot because everybody does it a little bit differently too. So you can add a lot of character in acting. If you just say, hey, hey, cool friend, could you just get some rollerblades on for me? Could you try throwing this ball for me? I would love to draw the way you do it. So we're gonna go skate, 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 and we're having a great time. Yahoo! Everything's going great. This was the best idea. And I'm just gonna have us shouting excitedly at each other. And there is a world where I could do this in a lot fewer panels, but I really want to build up that feeling of excitement so that when the horrible thing happens, you really feel that shift, right? And this is a cool thing about comics. You can take as long or as short as you want, and whatever choice you make will change how somebody reads that comic. And that's something you can look for when you're reading people's graphic novels. Is how long did they decide to take on any particular scene? Did they spread it out so that you see something dramatic happen over a long period of time? Did they cut away really suddenly? And how did it make you feel and why? This is all stuff that you can steal for yourself. But then we should do this. But then the husky has an idea of his own, right? And he had this like really cute clover pattern around his eyes that I liked a lot. Oh no, that made him look angry though. See, comics are hard. What does he see? I think you know. Meow. And then it was down a hill. Oh my gosh. And this is absolutely the scribbliest. Right now, I'm just trying to get across the idea of the drama and not the realism. And I think that makes it better, honestly. So let's see. How would I draw a husky just running, right? Woof, woof. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. And like, I'm gonna put the hair like coming all the way back. Because you know, like if you're on a roller coaster, you go down, your hair goes all the way up. And that's how you can tell that everything is going so fast. Things like just move with you, and it's so much fun to observe. And I'm gonna add all these speed lines. Oh no! And that's it. That is a story of how my sister and I ended up doing a few forward flips accidentally down a hill. We turned out fine. The dog turned out fine, but we did not go rollerblading with the dog again. So just to recap, we started off at home. We said, we're taking Comey for a walk. She said, okay. We said bye. As my sister was clipping the collar onto the dog, I was like, hang on. I have an idea, a great idea. So then we just casually started rollerblading down the street. It was the best. It was a great time until he spotted a cat and rolled us all the way down the hill. And that is an Autobio story that now I can take and look at in a few years when I have completely forgotten what happened and say, oh, yeah, that was a silly idea. But that's it. I'm going to stop sharing and come back and say hello. Let's see. How have we all been? Are there any fresh questions for me?
There are more questions for you.
Wonderful.
Okay. Nevaeh asked, did you read The Babysitter's Club as a young girl, and what other books do you like?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah, I still remember, and I will tell this story often, so I'm sorry if you've heard it already. But when I was a kid, I mentioned that I loved to read comics, but I also loved to read prose books as well. I was a huge fan of all sorts of different kinds of books. When I was the age of these babysitters and a little bit younger, I would go to the library, the school library, so often. I'd go in the morning, I'd go in the afternoon, sometimes I'd go during lunch, because I'm very fun. But one morning, I went into the library and the librarians stopped me. I was like, oh no, I have taken out too many books. They'll never let me come back. This is horrible. But no, they said, hey, listen, Gale, we're doing something really cool today because you're the fifth person this morning. We're actually having this giveaway where we give you a book to keep. And they handed me this brown paper wrapped book, a surprise book just for me. And I opened it up. And it was my very first Babysitter's Club book, the first one I had ever read. I went home, I went through it. I had to go right back to the library and grab all the rest I could find. I've been hooked ever since. And that's how they get you. But yeah, I absolutely adored the Babysitter's Club growing up, and it's really special to me. So I'm glad that I get to share that with people. For other books I love, there are too many probably, but a few that I would recommend. I love Animorphs, which is a prose series that is also now being adapted into graphic novels about a group of kids who turn to animals to fight aliens. It's very exciting and fun. I love those so much. I also really like the Tamora Pierce books, especially the Circle of Magic books. And let's see, for a few graphic novel recommendations, The Breakaways by Kathy G. Johnson is a perennial favorite, as well as Newsprints by Rue Zhu. I could list comics all day, but I hope those are some fun starting points.
That's awesome. Thank you. There's a question from Penelope. Do you have any advice for drawing comics?
Ooh, advice for drawing comics. So much. I think the biggest advice I'm always going to give is just draw a lot of comics. I know that's a very broad thing to say. For me personally, I found that it's really easy when you get started to say that, oh, like this comic isn't good enough because you're reading so many great comics that you love and want to emulate, right? But if you're noticing problems in your work, it's because your hand hasn't quite caught up to your brain yet. And that's amazing. That means that you have a really, really good eye and you just have to keep practicing. The cool thing about comics is you have to make a lot of pages to make a comic. So if you just keep that in mind, you're doing all the practice already. Just keep on going. Even if you don't like this page that much, you'll find that if you look back at that page after a month of making more and more pages, you'll have gotten a lot better and you'll probably find stuff that you actually like about that first page too. So don't get discouraged, keep on practicing, and keep on reading a lot of comics too. You're always picking up new ideas, even if you don't realize it.
Thank you. This question is from Charlie, Ruby, Sue, Violet, and Lucy. Who is your favorite character to draw and why?
Ooh, oh, that's so hard. Let's see. I love all of the characters for different reasons, but I have a lot of fun drawing Claudia because she is so visually creative. I know that when Claudia is showing up in a new scene, I'm gonna have to think about what kind of fun hairstyle to give her, what wild accessories she might be wearing, what cute shirt I wish I owned that I can put on her. So I get to make all of these wacky choices that I would love to make for myself or just have fun with. The downside of that is I then have to remember all the clothes I put on her in every subsequent page. So I'll get some notes back sometimes like, hey, Gale, Claudia's shoes changed like 4 times over the course of 3 pages, right? I'm like, sorry, thank you. My memory isn't that good, but it's so much fun to come up with cool new outfits for her.
That's awesome. They also want to know, what is your favorite color to dye your hair?
You might have a guess, but my favorite color right now to color my hair is blue. I would like to try pink again, but I've noticed that because I've been going blue for so long, the pink like fades out really, really quickly. Hair is wild, but blue is fun too.
And Erin says, I've read Logan Likes Mary Anne like 5 times in a month.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, that's really reassuring to hear because it took me a bit over a year to make that book. So to know that you're putting the time back into reading it feels very special to me. That's really cool.
And Penelope says, I have all the Babysitters Club books and they're my favorite books. Have you watched the TV show?
Yes, I love the TV show so much. I'm so glad that it exists for all of you. Oh my gosh, we turned that on and I was just so excited. I laughed, I cried, and I was just a little bit jealous and mad that the show had started so much after I started working on the series because those rooms are so well designed. I would have loved to reference them and not come up with all this stuff from my head. It's such a good series and everyone's so cool.
And Audra asks, are you working on any new books?
I am. I can't talk a lot about them yet, but I'm working on my own original graphic novels right now for Scholastic Graphics. I just, let's see, I'm partway through pencils right now, the sketching stage I talked to you about. So hopefully I should be done in time for the book to come out in the year 2022. So please wait for me.
Would you talk a little bit about the stages? You mentioned the pencil, so.
Yeah, definitely. Basically, there are a bunch of different steps to making a graphic novel, and those steps are a little bit different for every cartoonist. For me personally, when I'm adapting a Babysitter's Club book, I will start by, surprise, reading the original book once as a fan, just for fun, to like kind of start refreshing myself on the story. And then again, as someone who's thinking, here's how I'm going to adapt the book. What would be really interesting? What is the story really about? Just kind of asking myself questions as I read, taking notes in the margins, scribbling little notes to myself, like, how would I draw this? Do I need to include it? So after I've read the book a few times, I write an outline for myself. And an outline is kind of like an essay that says, here is what is going to happen in this book. Beginning, middle, and end. Just very straightforward, like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Here's what I think is going to happen. And that's the first thing that I send to my editor, who can look at that outline and think about the original book and say, okay, I see what you're going for, but what if we did this to make it even better? And that's something that you can do in your own life too, whether you're running it by a teacher, a friend, somebody whose judgment you trust. Even if you don't take all of their suggestions and ideas, sometimes having someone ask you questions can help you figure out what about your story you're really excited about. And that's amazing. So after we look at this outline, we say, okay, this is done and this is good. I get to move forward to starting to tell that story. For me personally, that means that the next step is writing a script, kind of like a movie script, where I say, okay, now that I know what happens in the story, here's what happens page by page. Some people go right to drawing. I personally find it easier to write things out first. That's just how my brain works. I find words a little bit easier to go for first. So I write this whole script out just for me, saying in panel 1, this happens and this person says this. And then I draw thumbnail sketches. And that's basically what you saw me doing with my Autobio comic, where it's like, it can be as simple as a stick figure. I just need to show who is where, saying what, and make sure that those balloons read in order. It's kind of setting up the bones of a book. And that's the next thing my editor is going to see. I make this entire book in thumbnail scribbles. My editor reads the thumbnails and comes back with even more great ideas and suggestions. And then I fix those. So I revise all the thumbnails, and then I get to move on to drawing the book. For me, that just means, okay, I know where everybody is. And now I have to think about how I want them to act. How can I make this scene even stronger? How can I use the camera to move in real close or pull further away to show how people are feeling, or show you something that you need to see, like a dramatic object that will be really important later. These are all things I'm thinking about as I'm drawing with more and more detail until I get to the pencil stage. And pencils are basically me saying, okay, I know basically what I want everything to look like, and this is what I'm going to ink over. So I print out those pencils that I mentioned I did digitally, flipped over so that I can use a bright light and trace my inks onto the other side. And inks basically means the final finished lines, where you can really see, who all is who. And you might notice that there are no letters on this page. That's because I add those using the computer after I've scanned the drawings back in. This means that if I realize there's, I don't have to fix original art. I don't have to worry about redrawing stuff if we decide to change a speech balloon. Wild.
That's so awesome. Thank you for showing that to us.
Of course.
I think that's the last of our questions.
Did we do it?
It was great. Do you have anything else you want to say before we go?
Oh my gosh, just I really appreciate your having me, spending the time with me today. I really, truly wish you the very, very best. If you are a creative person of any sort, genuinely, I hope that you keep at it and find joy in whatever it is you love, love, love to do. Comics bring me just the absolute most joy, and I'm really glad that I get to do this, and that I get to talk to you about it as well. This has been a real treat.
Well, we are so happy that you joined us today. Thanks so much, Gale, and thanks everybody for joining us.
It was great to see you. Thank you so much.